Okay, good morning. We're going to go ahead and take our seats and start this, please. If you came to the first question and answer for the CCNRs, the way we handled that one was we read each one and then asked for question and answers for that one. We're going to do this a little different because we've already had that one. We thought that rather than go through each one of those singular, we would go ahead, and this is a smaller group, we'd go ahead and just open this up to questions on the CCNRs. Let's just open it up and see how it goes. Okay. Let's just open it up to questions on the CCNRs. So if you'll come up to the podium and ask your questions, we'll do our very best to answer your questions regarding the CCNRs. Yeah, unbundle. I know it's so cold in here. I don't know, on the cold, if you understand, we have two heaters here in the pack, and one of them is out waiting for a part to come in, a fuse to come in. And so, as cold as it is out there, I want to tell you that we have a blast of cool air that hits us over here. So as cold as you are, we're twice as cold. So as our teeth chatter over here and stuff, we feel you're cold and double it. So there you go.
I'm Bill Trice, lot 2350. My question is on section 11.9. You took out must be electric. So does that open that up now for gas golf carts?
The gas and the I'll be happy to answer that one. That's actually my favorite one to answer. Only in that I get it frequently. The reason, yes, it does open up to gas golf carts, and the reason we put that in there, I will start with that. The reason we put that in there is over the last few years, it has come up to several of us a number of times from different residents saying, why do we not allow gas golf carts in the resort? And we didn't always have a good answer to that. And so we decided to put it out to the residents to vote. We don't have an agenda up here on whether we want gas golf carts or not. That is up to you guys. And so it's going to be up to you to vote yes or no on that. And that's number one reason why that's in there. So let me further add to the pros and cons of gas golf carts and people's concerns about gas golf carts. The newer gas cart, that's hard to say, isn't it? the newer ones out there, number one, they have a 4.5 liter gas tank to them. So the fact that people are concerned on whether they're going to carry a can of gasoline in their shed is probably pretty small, because they can drive to the gasoline station that's right outside both of our gates here and get it full just like they can a motorcycle. So I really think that's pretty small concern. Plus, if anybody's going to have a gas can for gasoline, it's going to be their leaf blowers that have been here for a very long time. So I don't think that's a concern, as well as paint thinner and everything else that's in sheds. So that concern I would push aside. For noise, I don't think, I've heard a number of residents say that they have already gas golf carts at their other residence, at their other places that they live, and they are as quiet as their electric golf carts are here, and that they require less maintenance, and they're less expensive to maintain, because of course we all know how expensive it is to replace our batteries in our golf carts and maintain them. So that's the reason that they like gas golf carts and have asked us to have them here. And The newer ones tend to be street legal, so they are quieter and they can go outside the resort to get their gasoline and maintain. So as far as noise is concerned, noise is kind of with us these days. We are a 55 plus community, and that means we're active, hopefully, and that means we play pickleball, which goes ping, 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 and we play tennis and does the same thing, and we have dogs that bark because we enjoy our animals, and we have motorcycles that make noise, and we have Jeeps that make noise, and we have diesel engine trucks that pull our nice big trailers and fifth wheels, and we have side-by-sides, and we have razors, and all of that makes noise. We have leaf blowers that make noise, and we have saws that make noise. That's life. That's being active. That's being who we are. So 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, because I don't think we're going to get a whole lot. Gas golf carts aren't really going to make a big impact here. So it gets back to the residents to vote how you want to do it, and then if it doesn't pass, then we can. You, 2 minutes. Did I do it? Did you turn me off? Okay. If it doesn't pass, then we can say to the residents who've been asking us, why don't we? I can say because we left it up to a vote and the residents didn't want it.
Okay, I'm good then, thanks.
Please, microphone.
Karen Stewart, lot 1389. And I have a couple of quick questions, I think, which are more housekeeping maybe. The first one is on section 5.5, pass-through assessments. The bottom line of this section is you have gutted and replaced the definition of pass-through assessments. Where that should have been done is on line 1.45, pass-through assessments. Now a person has to go to 2 places within the document to get the definition of pass-through assessments, which is not a good construct for a document. Secondly, pass-through assessment says that it's reoccurring on a regular interval and equal cost to each lot. You have now said in 5.5, it can be anything, doesn't have to meet those requirements. So am I correct? The board could choose anything, put it on a pass-through assessment, and it bypasses the 6% annual increase cap.
That is clearly not our intent. Our intent at this point was to basically take out the stormwater sewer pass-through, make it part of normal operations. And that's where everything else is at this point, in normal operations. Thereby, everybody pays the same amount each month on their HOA assessment. There could be some things down the road, but right now there is absolutely no plan to put anything on pass-through assessment at all.
First of all, I thank you for your explanation. You could have done that without adding the part. Board in its discretion determines what should be categorized as pass-through assessments, including but not limited to costs that meet the criteria set forth in section 1.45.
That information, let me answer.
Finish my question. That was part of my statement. We're going to have a new board of directors in the near future. How do we know what they are going to do? You are talking about your plans, which may be very shortly lived between now and April, and you have now opened it up that any board can pick anything as a pass-through assessment, and they would avoid the 6% cap on increase each year.
Okay, then vote no. My answer to your question was this language came directly from our attorney. It was not ours, it was his. So that's why it's stated the way it is stated.
Okay, thank you very much, I appreciate it. Next question. I'm now in section 3 of the bylaws. And you have inserted a new section 2 that board of directors must be members of the association. Not saying I have a conflict with that personally. However, in section 3, it says the director shall be an owner or the spouse of an owner, which allowed non-people on title to be board of directors. Now you've made it clear they have to be on title, because to be a member of the association, you're on title. So 2 back-to-back sections, you have created a conflict that could lead to future conflict and litigation of who can be a board of director. So,
Can we, let's dissect that just for just 1 minute. I'm sorry, Roberta Ernest. Members of the association
correct,
is an owner
correct, on title, yes.
on title. That's
Yes.
correct. That's no different. That is a state statute. You have to be an owner in order to be on the board of directors of an association. Okay? And then you said
Section 3.
3, each director shall be an owner or the
or
spouse of an owner.
spouse and an
Right,
owner.
so that was the original one, and we added, the only thing we added to that was that we wanted to make sure the directors that were on the board already stayed and remained in good standing with the association. So that was the only change. So you're right, verbiage was not changed on that. It's a little different on the one that we added, but again, the attorney looked at it and left it as members of the association, and each candidate must have been a member of the association for 1 year, meaning they must have lived here for 1 year, or owned here for 1 year before being able to apply.
I'm not disagreeing,
Okay.
but I am saying you have now created a conflict. You can have somebody who is a spouse, not an owner, run to be on the board of director because they meet the requirement in section 3. This is a holdover, I'm going to acknowledge, from when many men were on title and their spouses weren't. So the association made a provision, spouses not on title could be a director.
Fair
So
enough.
now you've created a conflict in the document, and I don't think that's good business for us.
Okay, and unfortunately, when our attorney looked at it, nobody picked that part up, and thank you for notifying that.
Okay? My next one is in Amendment 14.1 of the CCNRs, 14.1, amendment to the declaration. It says in quotes, which by the way gives added emphasis to this, that the title of the documents that have to be given to us to take a look at changes to the CCNR is amendment to declaration. You have not used that title in the CCNRs or any information you have provided. It opens the window that these proposed changes, even if they're voted in, were maybe not voted in appropriately for that reason. The second thing I would bring up in that, it says, furthermore, any proposed amendments shall be approved by the majority of the board and a majority of the owners. Misinformation has been provided on the Facebook page where it said that there just needed to be a quorum of 100,001 owners voting, and then each amendment after that, it doesn't require, it's just going to be whether total yeses or nos. According to this document, each and every amendment has to pass that threshold of 1,001. So I feel that it was inappropriate to have had authorized people put out different information on the Facebook page. I'm just passing that out for whatever it's worth.
And quote me where that's at right now so I can write it down.
Don't have it, not a big, I did actually go through all the Facebook pages, but I think it was a couple of days ago in 2 different locations. Sue Dahl, if I got
No,
the name
I meant
right.
quote
Yeah.
what you're saying on the amendment on
That
14.1, is that what you said?
14.1, yes. And I'm happy to give you guys my notes here
No, I'll
if you
pull it
would
up.
like. Last but not least, I appreciate, I should have started my comments. From the first time we were looking at CCNR changes, I should have started my comments, and I apologize. With the first time we were looking at the proposed changes to now, there's been a lot of work and a lot of cleanup on what you're proposing and simplifying so it's not so ambiguous. And I congratulate you on taking the time to do all of that work. One of the things, minor thing, is on the, sorry, it doesn't have a page number. It's the first thing on the restriction changes. You're going to replace residential vehicle every time it's listed in the document to manufactured HUD and recreational vehicle, which I appreciate that correction, because without that, I couldn't have lived in my park model because it's a recreational vehicle. However, you say you're going to change it to manufactured HUD throughout the whole document. That is not a defined term. It should have been manufactured home. And then the last thing that I would mention is, as a member of the election committee, we were very committed to accuracy. And in accuracy in our elections, accuracy in what has been put out. I'm not going to debate again whether or not you could have had an election committee. I do believe you could have, and the only limitation would have been we wouldn't have worked directly with owners' personal information, which I personally also supported, but there was nothing that said that we still couldn't have had these functions. And indeed, some of the functions live on. And it's this kind of simple but error that I don't think we need in important legal documents. That's my only comments.
I would like to clarify on the 14.1. So the amendment, or each of the 14 CCNR changes, which are being voted on individually, if we get 1,001 ballots back, each of those votes on the CCNR changes will equal 1,001 votes. You will have yes, no, and abstain. Abstain is a vote. You're saying that each one has to have 1,001 yeses before
Correct.
it passes.
That's the plain reading of this. Furthermore, any proposed amendment must be approved by a majority of the board and a majority of the owners.
A majority of the
Of the
board or the owners, that's
No,
correct. And according
and the
to,
owners,
and
and a majority of the
right,
owners.
majority. So, according to how our attorney provided with us, 1,001 ballots, and then the majority of a yes vote on each of those proposed changes. We can run a check on that, and we can go from there. If it is as he says, that's the way it will roll. If he says, no, he made a mistake, or no, it needs to be 1,001 yeses on each individual proposed change, then that's the way it will be. So we'll run a check on that.
Okay, and is that going to be disseminated to everyone? So we'll have-
Absolutely.
And
But
I
not on
assume you're-
Facebook.
I appreciate that, because I personally don't think that's the place where we should be getting
That's not
our
really where we're
information.
disseminating it, but yes.
And I assume you'll do also the same thing on the title with the attorney.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mickey Aston, Lot 13, and yeah, 40 years here as a homeowner. Thank you, everybody who showed up today. The internet is down, I believe, still, so this is not a live broadcast. Hopefully it is being recorded, but thank you all for taking time to be here. I appreciate you. Was that Karen? Yes? Okay. I'll try to hit all the topics that quickly that Karen did. I agree with what Karen said about 1.4.5 and the renaming of the pass-through. I had questions about that. The pass-through assessment itself, in taking that second line item of $15.22, which is our sewer, and moving it into our monthly assessment. I don't agree with it. There's no harm in leaving it as a second item on the invoice. And if it does move into our monthly assessment, it goes up 6%.
Is there a question here?
Yes,
or
I
is-
do. I do have a question. Well, excuse me. I'm getting there. I'm not at my 2 minutes yet, and I do have topics. So I don't think that, okay, what is the reason for moving the $15.22 up into the monthly assessment other than that it will be increased 6% every year? And it doesn't get increased 6%, staying as a second line item?
I don't think there was any particular reason so that it can be increased 6%. I take a little offense to assuming that was the case, because it was not. It is just to make the bookkeeping easier and to then open it up if some other item comes up that the board at the time feels should be a pass-through assessment, they can do it. Right now, they can't. So it was kind of opening up that statement. And whether or not stormwater and sewer is moved back into it is still an open question that has not been decided. We just took out that specific line item to open up the ability for any board to create a pass-through assessment if it meets the guidelines.
It was really a recommendation by the Finance Committee. It was written, Bill Powell had sent it to us and as a recommendation, and it was a recommendation from the Finance Committee. So we listened.
And I've talked to other people that are familiar with our billing. They say there is really no reason to move it up into the monthly other than it would increase 6%. It's not an extra cost to do bookkeeping by having it as a second line item. I also have issue with the word discretion, that the board could choose to do this with other charges at their discretion. Item 11.9, vehicles. This is going back to the no electric, or electric vehicles. Electric gas cards are no longer required. It's no longer mandatory. By passing this, the board, well, first of all, let me go back and dissect the reason
Let
for
me
it.
please
No,
interject one thing, Mickey. This is really about questions.
Okay, I have a question. So the reason for 11.9, taking out the mandatory that we're electric, which we have been since day one, you're allowing now in your note for the reason for this change, allowing for street legal golf carts. Our very current CCNRs right now require that we have street legal golf carts. So is this a push to start enforcing that CCNR? Because not every golf cart in here, no matter what type, is not street legal. But yet this CCNR 11.9 states that they have to be operational on public streets. And that means street legal. And if you don't know, street legal means you have to have seatbelts, headlights, brake lights, you have to have a certain speed, you have to have a windshield, you have to have a certain weight in order to go on the public street. So we have that CCNR. Why is that not being enforced? And is this a push to start enforcing that?
No, it is not.
Okay.
It is simply saying that
Gas-powered need to be street legal
gas-powered needs to be street legal
because they have to drive out to get fuel.
because they have to drive out to get fuel. This is not pushing for gas. This is allowing if they want to get gas.
Okay, and the other reason, that's a twofold reason of why this is being proposed, states that the requirement for a licensed driver per state statute. Our current CCNR says that operators of the vehicles, any type, have to be a licensed operator. You have also added in there, in the red, in the 2, that it must be an adult. That goes against state statutes because an adult in Arizona is 18, but they allow 16-year-old drivers. So if someone comes in for a delivery, a family member drives in, our CCNRs say that now that you have to be an adult. This was very confusing at the very first CCNR reading because people felt like they were choosing between two things, and those two things are already in our CCNRs. Vehicles, golf carts should be street legal, and operators should be licensed. So I don't know the reason other than you wanting to take out electric.
Take out electric,
Yeah, take it out being a mandatory. So you're wanting to take that out, which would allow for the gas carts. Any gas cart, I think I just heard you say, would be going out to a gas station to get gas, or they would be storing gasoline in their shed. If you're gonna take it out on the street, now you have to insure it, I would hope, and you have to have it licensed, which is an additional cost. So maybe people will do that.
and as far as being an adult, is the amount of accidents that we have
Oh, I know.
incurred here. You're fighting the fact that we want adult drivers and licensed
No,
drivers.
I'm just saying that you've added
And
that
licensed
in
drivers, you're actually fighting the fact that we
No.
want people licensed to drive their golf
there.
carts
No,
here?
I'm saying a driver is a 16-year-old licensed driver, but you're saying now they have to be an adult. So if we have DoorDash come in and they're 17 years old, you're prohibiting them from coming in. So this is just contrary to what makes sense.
No, stop. It says motor-driven bikes or cycles may only be operated by adults in accordance with applicable laws and ordinance. Golf carts may only be operated by a licensed driver. Therefore, the golf cart can be driven by a 16-year-old with a license.
And
It does not say that the golf cart driver has to be 18. Two
And-
different sentences. Please make sure we're reading the right thing.
And according to Arizona state law, a motor-driven bike or cycle can be driven by a 16-year-old. That's a licensed driver for that type of license.
Okay, then that just simply means that the state statute will override that piece of the CCNR, correct? Correct. State statute overrides it?
Absolutely.
Okay, then the state statute will override that.
I just don't understand why you're trying to limit that to adults and add it
I don't
in.
think, Mickey, it was intentional to be done that way. It was meant more as in making sure that it is the appropriate person that's riding or handling something that's of an motor-driven vehicle.
I take everything that you've proposed as intentional,
Okay.
and especially with the backing of an attorney. I've contacted the fire marshal. Has the board done any research on restrictions, laws about storing gasoline in sheds?
No, we have not. We're counting on management, I assume.
Okay. Well,
What is the question on that, though, if you have one?
if you have done any research on the storing of gasoline, the parameters, you're going to put guidelines out, how it affects our home insurance. All right. I will be back.
Good morning. I'm Brett Bonner at 1670, and I just have a question about the very beginning of what we're looking at here. And it says, note all administrative, grammar, spelling, renumbering, and state statute requirements will be automatically updated on completion of the vote. Can you tell us what state statute requirements would be automatically added?
Well, they won't be added. We were under the impression through conversations that state statute stuff would be updated automatically, but really what it means is that the state statutes, if they override our CCNRs, will still be the ones that apply. We can't go in and change, for instance, the one we had thought about would automatically be altered would be the clothesline one, because Arizona is actually a right to dry state. So we thought that would automatically be overridden once this was done, but as the attorney said, no, we actually have to vote it. It doesn't matter if it votes down or not. State statute overrides it. So we chose not to put it in for a vote because we already have 14 out there, so we left it alone. But it will not it will not change unless we vote on it. So the only things that will change will be the ones we voted on. State statute would just do a natural override on anything that doesn't apply appropriately. Okay.
And the reason I ask is because in the original proposed CCNRs, you talked about Section 33-1803 Arizona state law, which state law says, and this is what you had in there, that you couldn't impose an assessment more than 20%, right? And my concern with that is because in the original document,
Yeah.
you did not include the entire section. You left out the part that said, unless limitations in the document would result in a lower limit. You took that part out. So I'm wondering if, this is my question, if Section 33-1803 of the state law is automatically updated after the vote, will it include the entire section?
So let me kind of address that, because I think, Bert, we talked about that before. I think you were misunderstanding, if I may. When we wrote this out, it was from, so whatever we had in our CCNRs currently, to. And when you change it to the 2, you don't need to, we're not saying, what we were saying is we wanted to go no more than up to 20%, right? Without a vote of the owners. You didn't have to put in there the state statute, which state is not gonna explain it the right way. You don't have to put in there that unless there's a less amount stated in your documents, because you're changing it in your documents. But the state law does say up to 20% unless your documents say some nominal number underneath.
And ours say 6%.
Right. It does. So since that was a big discussion and some confusion and some misrepresentation, we decided we just take it out. It's not gonna change if most HOAs that are starting now are automatically going into a 20%, up to 20%. We will not be able to do that unless we can change our nominal number of more than 6%. So we'd have to change the actual way that we would vote on it. Does that make sense?
No.
Okay, in other words, we would have to, if we were going to go through with a vote on this, let's say in 3 years, it would have to be a change from just the 6% and say up to 10%. Because we could never get anybody to go right up to 20% without an authorization of the ownership.
Just to be clear, we are 6%.
Yes, sir.
Or adjusted for inflation, depending on
Yes,
the
sir.
CPI.
Yes.
So the 20%, so the section that I've referenced will not be added
No,
to automatically updated on completion of the vote.
no. We're not doing anything with that. We're leaving it alone.
That's my question. Thank you very much.
You bet.
Good morning, Angie Schmidt, Lot 37. Can you hear me? No? Okay. I have a couple of questions. One regarding the 25% that's going to be invested, that could potentially be invested outside of FDIC insured investments. So, and I understand the concept because I have a lot of years of banking experience. I understand the concept that you want the ability to invest in other investments outside of that. However, when I read the material, my concern is that the purpose, my understanding is the purpose is to have a better return on our money, right? So I understand that you might not get as good a return in an FDIC investment, but you also have to explain to me that you're not getting a guaranteed return on the investments that are 25% invested, correct? I mean, there's no guaranteed return on those either. Like a CD, we're going to get 4 or 5%. Other investment, an annuity, an investment in an insurance company is not going to be a guaranteed investment.
Pretty much it is, yes.
It is. There's
Yes.
no risk of that insurance company going broke.
That would be the only instance.
And has that happened?
No.
Yes.
Not, well, it has happened.
Yes.
Not in who we have invested with.
Right. But I guess my concern is we're saying And my other concern is we have an investment committee of 2 people, is my understanding. That's what I
No,
was
we
told.
do not. We have an investment committee of 4.
Okay. When, at the finance committee meeting I went to, they said it was an investment committee of 2 people. And
That's from the finance committee,
Okay.
that piece. There are other people involved.
Okay, okay. I guess I didn't understand that. I missed that material somewhere. So, but the finance committee is not advising on the investments or not involved with that investment portion. Is that correct?
They are involved, but we also have 2 other people, and we have an investment advisor through LPL Financial who actually puts forth where that money could go, given the parameters that we've given him, being very conservative, basically secured and guaranteed.
Okay, but that information is not, the finance committee is not advising on that portion. It's only the investment committee. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So I guess my question is, why are we changing it now? You know, maybe there should be some more research done. I understand that we've already done it. I understand that we're backtracking and covering ourselves. I understand that. But I also think there should be a few more parameters set, and I think it's too, like, I think it's a rushed decision to make this decision right now. You know, rather than being more specific on the types of investments. That's my personal opinion, and that's why I'm asking the questions of the board. Are we making the decision just to backtrack and cover ourselves, or should we do more research?
I do not believe we ever made the decision to backtrack and cover ourselves. We've always been very honest and upfront about where investments have been made and why.
I'm not saying that you did anything to cover
But
yourself. What I'm saying is the policy was not that you could take 25% out and invest in other investments. Originally, that was not in the original.
It had no
policy.
percentage in the original. We could do it anytime we wanted. In the original, based on what investments we were looking at. The original investment policy was pretty open.
Okay. So I misunderstood that it was supposed to be an FDIC insured investment.
It was in I'll explain
Okay.
again what
no,
happened.
That's fine. Like I said, I haven't been in every meeting.
CC&Rs, that's okay. CC&Rs said FDIC insured. Our investment policy, which had been in existence for a while before I came on the board,
Okay.
said it had to be conservative, guaranteed, secured investments. That's all. And it was not until later, probably a year and a half or so after I got on the board, maybe 2 years, well, about a year and a half, that we realized that the investment policy was not tied to the CC&Rs. And those investments had already been made.
Right.
Okay, so that was, whoever put the investment policy together did not realize it was not in conformity with our CC&Rs. Yes, we already made some investments, but remember at that time, the banks at CDs were only giving maybe 0.5% interest.
Right.
Interest was very, very low. We felt that if we could find some guaranteed, secured investments, as much as you can be, I mean, we looked for extremely conservative companies,
Right.
to go ahead and invest our excess funds and make a little extra money, a little bit more interest or gain on investment, whatever. So that's the only reason it was done. When we realized that the CC&Rs said they must be FDIC insured, as soon as any investment matured, we went back to the CDs only.
Okay.
Now, we still have some that are not CDs, but those are being changed as we move forward. And it is up to all of you then to decide if you don't want us to invest in anything other than FDIC insured investments, or to give us some flexibility to find other guaranteed secured investments to put some of our money in. It's totally up to, that's why we put it out there.
Yep, and I understand that. And I guess personally, I feel like there should be more guidelines around that, the
Well,
type of
and
investments.
that's fine.
I'm just
What,
making a
have you read the
suggestion.
investment policy?
I've not read the entire investment policy.
Because I will tell you, they did it in 2022, and I think they did a very good job. It is very, very stringent and gives great guidance, and that's why the investment team went forward with this. And then, like Becca said, several months after the investments had been made, they found there was a conflict between the CCNR and
Okay.
the investment policy. But the investment policy is actually very well written, and it's out there on Neighbor, so it is available.
Okay, and that was followed completely with those investments.
Well, what did we invest in? Corporate bonds,
Okay,
which is a recommendation.
Corporate bonds, annuities, 2 different annuities.
Money
and we had
markets.
some treasury bonds.
okay. That's just I just
And
I don't like the idea of just, we're just
just so
throwing
you
it in
have
there,
some
so-
info, since you're in the banking industry,
Right.
insurance companies, actually, if one goes under, which there have been in the past, normally the surrounding insurance companies will buy up those annuities because they don't want them to go bad. So a lot of times they're guaranteeing themselves with each other, if you will. So
Yep.
yes, I know there's a chance,
Right.
but I think that for the most part, we're, like I said, the LPL consultant has been very good at making sure they're more conservative type investments and solid companies with a good rating.
And, yep, but usually and normally, words matter, because usually and normally, there's still some risk, right?
And there's a risk with a bank too,
Right.
or a credit
Except
union.
we have FDIC insurance backing a bank, so. The other question I had, and it's not being changed, it is highlighted. I see a like new condition in a lot of documents in here. And, I'm sorry, I see like new condition in a lot of the documents in here. And that's a question I would have is that really, words matter, are our properties all in like new condition? Because there's a lot of variation in the ages of properties. And so I just am questioning if that should be addressed because it's in there. And so I'm questioning if you've thought about that. Have you addressed that?
That's a tough one. And we look at it, and you've got a lot of property and a lot of owners who have been here for 40 years, to use that quote, how do you address people who have been here for a very long time and have their motorhomes or their fifth wheels or their trailers or whatever, and then go back and mobile homes and their snuggle whites and so forth, grandfathered
Right.
in.
Right. So
So
should
that's
it be
why-
good repair? I'm just questioning.
I know.
Like new is that's a pretty big term, and that could really come back and bite some people, the ones that have been here for 40 years or are on a fixed income or.
I agree,
okay.
and that's why we try and use those words gingerly. The like new,
Right.
kind of covers it, and movable. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a gentle term.
And again, as it was said before, I appreciate the changes that have been made,
Yeah.
thus far. But thank you.
One 1317 Lisa Day. And Angie, you just said words matter, and I agree. And something that this board just said that I'd like to clarify. The annuities that were purchased were in 22, correct? The investment policy that Roberta just said was after that, or before that, was actually dated in 2020.
I said 2020.
You said, well, we can pull the recording, but I think you said 2020. And it doesn't matter, I'm not going to argue with you, Roberta. 2020 is when this investment policy was signed by board members.
Yes.
Some of you were on the board at that time.
No.
Or, doesn't matter. It was signed by 2020.
It does matter.
It does matter. Let me finish, please, Roberta, before you start arguing with me. This was signed in 2020. When those investments were made that were outside of our governing documents, that was in 2022. You're on the board, and some of you were on the board in 2022. This document was already in play. This document was signed and approved by the board. You had an opportunity as a board to read it and go by the guidelines that were in here, and you chose not to. That's our concern. Policies in place, signed by the board, a board. You knew that this policy was in place, and you made investments outside of the investment policy, and you knew it. That's concerning to all of us. This is our money. You're playing with it in a dangerous position.
Lisa,
Is
I
there a
take real exception to that
You
because
usually do.
We did follow the investment policy at the time. It was not in compliance with CCNRs. So hold up your document, that's what we used.
This very clearly states,
This is not about an argument, Lisa. You're arguing.
I'm not arguing, I'm letting
You're stating
people
a
know
statement,
that our
and this is about
people-
questions
our
on the
board
CCNRs.
knew, and they went
You know-
ahead and used our money inappropriately. If anybody'd like a copy of these documents, they are on Neighbor, and I also have copies I'd be happy to share with you.
It's right out there. The investment policy is on Neighbor. It was signed in 2020, and the investments that were made in 2022 followed the investment policy. The problem is the investment policy did not meet with the CCNR. CCNR overrules the investment policy. Once that was discovered, Lisa, I don't know how many times we got to say it, the investment team came back and stopped everything. No more money was put into anything unless it was FDIC covered. I'm not sure where you're going. You're right. The people that signed that investment policy, one person is on this board in 22. He was the president at that time. The treasurer at that time was someone entirely different. We inherited it in 22, signed in 2020, was well written, and we made investments based on that investment policy, which unfortunately did not meet the standards of the CCNR requirements. So then we stopped. I don't know what else you want to hear.
We're moving on. Next question.
Hi, Chuck Garvey, lot 354. Back to that same thing, you mentioned that there's an investment committee. Why isn't that investment committee doing your monthly reports on your agendas? They're not listed in any of the, it's finance and communications, but there's no investment report.
Because it is a subcommittee of the Finance Committee.
So Bill needs to address that every month on what the finance committee, what the investment committees are doing within the finance?
I don't think I'm quite following what you're asking.
Well, I'm just curious because you said it's under the finance committee is the investment committee.
It's a
But when he-
subcommittee, yes.
But he never mentions anything when he presents to you guys, like, it says Bill Powell will provide an update. Nothing's ever mentioned about what our investments are.
Okay, well, that can be
Or
arranged.
can we add that as a separate subcommittee on the agenda so we all know what the investments are?
They're on the financial report every month. So I guess we figured that was letting everybody know what monies have been invested and where, because they are on the financial report.
Kathleen Connor, lot 1312. My question goes back to the money, which I think most of us that's our question. So we have now an investment policy committee. Who is on that committee, please?
It is the treasurer, one member of the finance committee.
May I have the names, please?
Well, the treasurer is me,
Right.
Becca Paulson, Blaine Rubish, president of the board, Marie, and our LPL financial advisor.
LPO financial advisor is whom?
His name is Chris Howard.
Okay. And you said Blaine Roudish? I'm sorry.
Rubish,
Rubish, okay. And that's Roberta's husband, correct?
yes.
Oh, okay. So that's not a conflict of interest that we
It
have
is
any of
not,
that?
because
Okay.
Roberta has nothing to do with it.
Well, if it's her husband on that committee, I beg to differ, but that's a whole nother thing. My other question is, if you have a finance committee and now an investment committee, so we have committee, but yet we don't have those reports. And I know you said it's on the financial, but the financials are not easy for everyone to read. So a report monthly and a meeting and a board meeting would be very beneficial.
So noted.
Thank you.
Karen Stewart, lot 1389, and sorry I've got several questions, but I was out of town when you had your first meeting. I'd like to do a clarification so that I understand the intent of 5.1, that if this change is adopted, any assessments or fines or penalties, instead of being just against our lot, if we have an affidavit of a fixture, it would put that lien against that mobile home, park model, whatever. Not just the lot, but everything. Okay, I think that change would, just a suggestion, have deserve some explanation to our community. When Happy Trails was started, nobody was living here full-time. As more and more people live here full-time, for tax and insurance reasons, they're getting these affidavits of affixtures that has some advantages for both of those. But in 5.11 of our CCNRs, it says that each owner hereby waives their homestead rights. And in Arizona, you have homestead rights that protect the very first part of your investment. It's in the process of being changed. I'm not sure if it's changed from 200 to 400,000 or not. But now you have kind of two things that actually create an environment where people who this is their permanent full-time residence, they no longer have the homestead protection, they no longer have the protection, it's not just against their lot. And I think that would have deserved some explanation and clarification for the community. Questions of me?
I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to. All we've said is that if somebody owes money, the debt stays with the person if they sell and move on. So I'm not quite sure what you're referring to. Yes, there is a difference between a manufactured home with an affidavit of a fixture or not. One is personal property. If you have the affidavit, David, it becomes real property. That's the only difference that we've made here.
Well, it's correct. It just says such a continuing lien upon the owner's lot, but not against a recreational vehicle or manufactured HUD without an affidavit of a fixture. That means if you have an affidavit of fixture, it's going to go against your lot and it's going to go against your park model, manufactured home, whatever it is you've affixed.
You cannot, first of all, you cannot affix a park model.
I believe my park model is affixed.
Is it? Okay.
And it, by the way, doesn't have a VIN number because it's affixed.
Fixed,
And so
okay.
now we don't meet the requirement of a recreational vehicle or a manufactured HUD home the way this was created, but I'm sure those are minor details. But I do think this fact in this CCNRs that we are required per the CCNRs to waive the homestead waiver, that combined with this change, you have really increased the risk and exposure to people who are full-time residents or have affixed their park models. And I just think explaining what this meant would have been a courtesy to the broader community. Any more questions of me?
Brett Bonner, 1670. I want to go back to the FDIC insured proposed change. I spent more than a decade in the mutual fund industry and spent a lot of time with advisors. I was registered with FINRA Series 7, 63, and 66. And annuities do have risk. And I'm just pulling from differing websites here, but mostly AI. So, several risks include fees, which we'll talk about in a minute, inflation. So an annuity, you're getting a guaranteed set amount for how much money is in, but if inflation goes up, the amount of money does not go up with inflation. And I'm just saying we should all know this. That's the interest rate risk that can impact. Liquidity risk, you may have to pay a penalty if you withdraw money before the end of the deferral period. Market risk, the value of your annuity can decline under some policies in a market downturn. Tax risk, I don't know that that applies to us. The company could go out of business, but that rarely happens. You may have to pay a penalty if you withdraw money before the end of the deferral period. As far as fees, if you cash out early, that's a fee. Administrative fees cover account management, including accounting and record keeping, administrative costs, management of the underlying stock or bond account, rider fees. If we have income guarantees, there could be a rider fee. Commissions also are taken out, underlying sub-account commissions, and it all depends on the type of annuity that you have. One more thing is we have an LPL advisor, and LPL advisors get paid mostly on a percentage of assets under management. And LPL says, and it depends on each advisor how they structure.
We went on a straight percentage. There's none of those fees. We negotiated a fee with LPL
No,
before we did any of
okay,
this.
if I may, that's the fee for LPL, but within the annuity, there are all of these other fees, and that's why annuities are generally frowned upon by most financial advisors. So what is the fee that he gets? What percent of assets under management? So if we have, say, $9 million with him.
I believe we pay 75 basis points.
So a basis point is 1%. So we pay 0.75. So what is, if somebody could do the math real quick, what's 0.75 times 9 million? Anybody? I'll do it. How much? And is that quarterly? Is that annual or quarterly? Anyway, the point I'm making is FDIC insured account, if you get a CD or something, and I understand there's not going to be the rate of return that you're going to get in other investment vehicles. However, it is totally, absolutely safe with none of those other costs that potentially are included. And when we say we're paying him 75 basis points, that does not include all of those other fees that are in the actual annuity. So I hope you guys look at that. You know, these are just things that I think people should know. So thank you.
And Brent, I invite you to join the Finance Committee. There's always an opening.
Blaine Rubish, Lot 712, member of the Finance Committee, member of the Investment Committee. The fees are taken out before we show what our return is. The amount we received as interest is what we get. There's no fees taken out of, once they determine what our interest rate's going to be, that's the amount of money we have. And you can calculate your return from that. Now, FDIC insured. Does anybody in here have money in a credit union? That's not FDIC insured. And anybody else have money in insurance companies, life insurance companies? Pardon? Right, we're talking about the community's money. We're also talking about FDIC insured. And credit unions are not. Credit unions have their own organization to back each other up. Nobody's ever lost a dime from an insurance company annuity, because insurance companies do the same thing. They back each other up. If an insurance company's going broke, the other insurance companies pick up the tab and take it over. Nobody's ever lost any money in an insurance company annuity. And when we put $500,000 in an annuity, the full $500,000 is going in there at whatever interest rate the company said we're going to get. One was 3.5%, I believe. One was 5%. We're getting 3.5% on $500,000 that we put in there. Not after commissions are taken out, not after and fees that are built into the contract are taken out. We're getting the interest rate on the full amount we put in there. There's no other costs taken out of there. Nobody can dispute that in any way, shape, or form. So no, they're not FDIC insured. But how strong is FDIC? That's the strength of the government. Yeah, they go under, we all go under, and everything else goes under. Any other comments you need answered?
Okay, this is supposed to be questions regarding the different CC&Rs. This is not supposed to be a person's opinion trying to sway you about their opinion. This is strictly yes or no votes. You have your own opinions and you have your own thoughts about these things. You don't need to be persuaded about Mickey's opinion, Lisa's opinion, Kathy's opinion, my opinion, Roberta's opinions, or Blaine's opinions. These are your opinions. If you have a question on something, we can answer your question on something. We don't need to hear your opinions on something. If anybody has any other questions on something else, we have about 2 minutes left to this.
Mickey Aston, Lot 13. Section 3, Association 3.16, Funds of the Association from 1985. Our CC&Rs, which is the top governing document, has said investments must be FDIC insured. The investment policy signed by a current board member in 2020, which is 5 years ago. Number 2, B, the funds issued by financial institutions that are insured by the FDIC and are limited to $250,000 in principal per institution. This community has dealt with FDIC failure in the past. Linda Johnson knows the history as well as I do. Around 1990, this community failed. Our holding company, Western Savings, went under. We were bailed out by the FDIC, thankfully. Resolution Trust Company owned us for a while. We went through many owners. I won't go there anymore. But we have dealt with failures of institutions. It is not common in the world, the US, but it has happened. So I don't understand, maybe I could phrase a question. Why didn't the board adhere to the CC&Rs? Instead went with a document from 2020 that also said FDIC. I just don't get it, and I don't think you have an answer. And Rebecca, you have stated that we have had a loss in these investments at times. I think you called it unrealized, but we have had a decline in those assets. And then you said we had an increase in those assets. You've also told me through email that some of these annuities are tied up until 2028, that we are not going to cash them out, take penalties, but we are going to sit by and hope that they continue to go up. I also have a question, though, so this is a question. Earlier, I think you said that there were 4 people on the finance committee, the investment committee, investment. Becca, the treasurer of the board, Blaine Rubish, sorry if I mispronounced that, who is a member of the budget committee, finance committee, investment committee, and was Marie a third person, the president of the board?
The president of the board.
Who is the 4th person?
LPL, our advisor from LPL.
Chris Michael Howard from LPL. Okay, I thought it was 4 members from the community, so 3 plus 1. Does HomeCo have anything to do with the investments? Any advice?
The only thing that HomeCo does is they do, when we give them money to invest in CDs, FDIC insured, they ensure that they're all placed in banks so that we don't exceed the $250,000 limit.
Okay, and I agree. You sent me an email and said that HomeCo does oversee the CDs, the 250,000. But we do have CDs that are more than 250,000, I believe.
We do not. They are 250, and they may show more, but that is the interest that has been earned.
Okay.
Never are they invested for over $250,000.
Okay. Does anybody, HomeCo or anybody on the board, make a commission from any of these investments?
No.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right.
Any questions on the CCNRs?
All right, we're done. Thank you very much for coming.
Thanks, everyone. Is it Dave? Turn me on. Oh, not you know what? Turn the mic on. Sorry, everyone. I just want to say thank you all for being here. I know it's been a tough couple months. Remember, you have your right to vote. So you vote how you feel fit, you see fit. I also want to say we have our Meet the Candidates scheduled for Monday here in the PAC from 1 to 4. So please come in and meet the candidates. And then we also have one on Tuesday evening from 6 at night to 9 at night. Okay? Thank you.
I don't know how any of you do this. Thank you, Jody. Amazing. I talked to you the other day at the